Today, the DS Incubator continues on the series about working with the terminal. And today I thought of presenting a use case showing off the skills that we have learned so far, which are not many, but still quite useful. For example, we can use what we learned to customize our computer environment, our terminal, and then reuse that environment, for example, in our RStudio Cloud project or any other computer. And I unfortunately, I have lost my system many times, and having saved my configurations allowed me to recover in less than a day. So that was it was very important for me to know how to do the kind of thing that I'm gonna be showing today. Basically, once you have your computer set up the way you like, how can you save those configurations, and then how can you reuse them elsewhere? So in this, I have to also thank Linda, because the idea comes from interactions with her where we were setting up an RStudio Cloud project, which are usually ephemeral, but we decided to try make that environment as close as the environment that we have in our local computer. So the inspiration comes from there. So the skills, just to review very quickly, were skills to navigate our file system and to edit our file system, to do things like moving around our file system and then copying files from one place to the other, removing files. And then we also touched on the idea of dot files, which is the files that store the configurations for your system. And we also touched on the idea of aliases, which is a simple way of writing your own computer programs, basically, on the terminal. So we're gonna put all of that together into this use case. So let's jump to today's lesson. So for that, I'm gonna go to my terminal and I'm gonna spin a Docker container. You don't have to do this if you don't use Docker, but if you do want to reproduce my computer environment exactly, then this Docker container has everything you need. So now this little computer that Docker created for me is waiting for me to start it in the web browser. Localhost RStudio is the username and the password is just 123. So now I should be entering an RStudio environment with a pretty basic terminal. So we're going to explore that in a moment. So I'm going to also go to the project folder, ds.terminal, and click on the RStudio project there to make this here on the top right the project where I want to be. The only thing I need from that project really is a guide for myself to remember what I wanted to show you. So I'm gonna go to the file that hosts today's lesson and show it here on the viewer. So I'm gonna need this file with Shift-Control-K. In a moment it's gonna appear here, and that's gonna be my guide. So let's make this pretty small, maximize this vertically, and the same thing here. So now I'm gonna go to the terminal and I'm gonna clear with Control-L or with the word clear. That's the same thing. So the very first thing I want to do is explore the environment in which I am. So let's pretend that this is my local computer. So I'm going to have a quick look at the configuration files I already have in my local computer, and then I'm going to cherry pick the ones that I need and store them somewhere else. So the very first thing I could do is print wd, print working directory, to know where I am. In this particular case, this terminal is configured so that the information where I am is already kind of shown here. So this is not the home of the computer, so I'm going to move to the home with cd, change directory tilde, which is short for home. So now a print working directory will only print the home component of the path where I was before. So now I want to do a little exploration of the files that I have there. But remember, ls by default only prints the files and folders that are not hidden. But configuration files generally start with a dot, and that hides the files from ls, but no problem. We remember that there was some option to show hidden files, so we can ask for help to ls. As you know, now the help file is too long, so I have to kind of scroll. It's kind of awkward, and I know that the option that I'm trying to look for refers to all. So all starts with A, and that is the top of the head file, basically, like the head of the head file, because the different flags are sorted alphabetically. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pipe that to compose the ls help command with head. So once I get the output of help, then I'm gonna just ask for the first few rows, the first few lines. And there it is. So what I want is this flag. I wanted to remember that ls minus a shows me almost all, which is all except for the dot and the dot dot directories that are always a way to kind of query for like a move around as well in your file system. So here is what we have so far. From everything that I see here, the files that I'm going to be interested in today are this one, bashrc, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. Profile, because it's kind of basic and calls many other files, and then a few more that we are going to create right now. So the first thing, in a fresh system that you would want to do is to tell Git who you are. So for example, if I am in this computer and I do a git config, let's say global username, if the computer was configured, I would get here an answer with my name, but I don't. So instead, then I'm gonna press the up arrow to recover the last command and actually add my username here. So it's Mauro Lepore. So what we're doing here is creating some configurations that are gonna be stored somewhere. So I wanted to demonstrate how configurations that you enter or you set through the terminal get actually stored somewhere in your computer, and where that place is and how can we reuse that later. So now I also have to tell Git my email. So okay, now that we have entered that information, let's first clear this mess. So Control L, and let's do an ls minus a again. So notice that now we have this git config file that didn't exist before. So one way to inspect the contents of a file is with cat. I covered that last time. So git, and I can avoid typing the whole thing if I use tab completion. If I hit tab, that auto completes. So here you can see now that git config stores my name and my email, which I enter through the terminal. But the file itself is something that I may want to reuse in a different computer, so I don't have to do this again and again. Of course, this is just one little thing. Maybe you don't mind doing it again in a new computer, but imagine that this is just an example, right? So this is just the surface, and you may have a ton of configurations that customize your environment, and when you work in a different computer, you want to reuse. Otherwise, the new computer will feel like really awkward. So okay, so we already have a new file that we would like to add. So it's gonna be git config is one that we are interested, the dot profile also, and then bashrc. And in bashrc, I still haven't explained why. So one thing that is pretty useful, I find, is the idea of alias. So alias is little commands, little programs that you create for yourself that are kind of shortcuts for longer commands. So I explained last time that one very useful one is a safer way of removing files. So I'm going to show that with an alias. So the idea is, with alias, if you just print the word alias, what you get is a list of all the aliases that you have configured. But if you use alias and then you define something like this, rm, for example, equals, and then quotes rm minus I, what you're saying is in the name rm, store what you would do normally with rm, but in this case with the flag minus I. The flag minus I, what it does is it forces you to confirm that you really want to remove something when you remove a file. So rm is a command that we use to remove files and directories, and it is unsafe in that if you remove something, it's gone and it's gone forever. And the minus I flag makes it a little safer, because you can then check if you remove what you wanted or something else. So I'm gonna run that. So if I now type alias, that rm minus I is there, but it is set in a very ephemeral way only for this specific terminal. If I create a new terminal here, I wouldn't expect that to be. Let's see, alias. There you go. So you see how the last one here is not rm. So that's because what I did before was specific for that terminal. How can I save that alias for good for my entire system and reuse it later? Okay, I'm gonna exit this terminal first and go back to the one that we were before. You can do that with the word exit. So you close the terminal and then you can start another one with bash, because it's the name of the program that runs the terminal. So I'm going to press up arrow to recover the command here, the rm alias that I created. I'm going to go to the origin of the first column of this line with Control A, jump in there. So one way I could create that alias, or I could save that alias permanently, would be to save it in a file that is called .bash _ aliases. So the file is called like this, .bash _ aliases. And how can you write it? Well, there's a couple of ways, which I showed last time. One way is to redirect the output of echo. So I'm gonna show this probably is so echo. So let me first remove this. So this is the entire command, but let me first go step by step. So if I type echo and in between quotes I write something, that something is printed to the console. If instead to the console I want to send that output to some file, I can do greater than, and then the name of the file. And this file doesn't exist yet, but I'm creating it in the current working directory, which is the home, right? So after I type enter, I can do now a cat for .bash aliases, and fair enough, that is my alias there. And also if I do an ls with -a, I can see that the file bash aliases is there, which is also another file that I may want to reuse. Aliases are pretty cool. One gets very used to working with aliases. So when you go to another computer, you really miss them if you don't have them. So let me clear this up with Control L again. And let's edit that file .bash aliases to add one more alias just for demonstration. So let's do vim this time. So instead of using the echo and redirect approach, we're gonna actually enter an editor. And I'm using vim because it is particularly hard to use. So I want to again refresh the few concepts that you need to understand about this editor so that it doesn't kind of bite you. So how it works, you just name the program first, vim, and then the file that you want to edit. If it doesn't exist, it will create it, but if it does exist, it will just open it. So vim has, as I said last time, two modes. You enter the program in what's called the command mode. It's not the mode in which you type text. To start typing text, you have to enter the insert mode. So you type the I, and that will, make you fall in this insert mode. So here you can see that there is the word insert. So that means that I can now, for example, jump to the end with the key end. I can press enter and go to the new line, and I can start typing something like alias and create a new alias. So one new alias that I would be interested in having is an alias to make R start with the options that I usually use in my RStudio. So if I go to Tools, Global Options, I really like this to be unchecked and this to be displayed as never. So basically this, what it does is asks R to always start from a blank slate and never carry any objects that you may have created in one R session onto the next session. So that's fine with RStudio, but how do you do that in R? Okay, in R, you start R with the flags no save and no restore data. So that way, next, if I run R on the terminal as opposed to RStudio, then R will behave that way. So sorry, this was a little fast. I was here in enter mode where I could type text, and then what I wanted to do is to save this file and close it. How do you do that in Vim? And that's probably the most important thing you need to know about Vim, how to get out of it, is you press escape and you will see how this insert word disappears. So I'm gonna press escape now. And now I enter this command mode. With command mode, if I type shift and column, it won't be entered here where I was standing in my cursor. Instead, it's gonna be inserted at the end because I'm giving Vim a command, an instruction. And the instruction I'm gonna give it is save, which weirdly enough means is you command to save with W, and then you command to quit with a Q. Q makes a bit more sense, but W I think is for write. So with that, if I do enter now, the file will be saved and will be closed. So I'm now ready to do, for example, a cat .bash aliases will show that now that file has the two lines that it has. So now we need to kind of prove that the aliases exist there, and I'm not very sure if it will appear here. I think it won't. Alias. The remove is because I entered that before, but not the R resave. And the reason is, again, because this terminal was already running by the time I added the aliases. And the aliases are read when the terminal starts. So you have to close, I mean, it will work in a new terminal, or you can close all the terminals that you have. And when you start a new one, a new terminal, that one, I would expect now if I type alias, I expect that alias to be here, and it is. Here it is, right? So new terminals. So basically, you're restarting the environment, the terminal environment, and only then the aliases are gonna be read. So now we are at the point where we want to save the files. But before I do that, I also wanted to show. Let me do a CD again to the home directory. I wanted to show you the contents of Bash, because Bash has some of, the aliases that we have, the ones that, not the ones that we wrote, but the ones that were already there, come from, in this case, from .bashrc. So that's kind of to demonstrate why we want to copy that file. So we may need to inspect that file. So let me clear this up. So one way to inspect, I told you before, is with cat. But the problem with cat is that it prints way too much, and it's not clever. I can't search for words, for example. So instead, I'm gonna use not cat. I'm gonna use less. Less is a program that allows you to navigate a file with with pressing the space bar. You go down and up and stuff. But one good thing that it does is also has the / command that allows you to type for a pattern that you want to search inside that file. So alias, for example, if I wanted to see if there's any alias defined inside this file .bashrc, I could search for the command alias. Now with enter, I see that yes, I discover a bunch of aliases that have been set in this file. So this proves that this is the file that contains a bunch of the aliases that I'm interested, and thus I need to save it in my .files folder that I can then later reuse. So let's exit this command with Q, and let's do another quick refresh. ls-a shows now all the files that I want and more. So what we want to do is to copy only the files that we are interested in inside a new folder, so we can then move them around. So let's create a new folder with make dir. It's the command to create a new directory, make directory, and let's call it .files. So if I do an ls without the -a, I can see that to the two folders that I had before, desktop and project, now I had just added the .files folder, this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy all the files that I'm interested in. So .bash aliases is one. The other one was git config. The other one was bash rc, and the final one was .profile. The other ones I'm not interested. And what the way copy works, you can ask for help for that command to see how it works. But basically, you can give as many files as you want to copy, and then if you give it at the end a folder .files, all those files will be copied inside that folder. So if we now do an ls-a inside .files, you can see that those files are there. So that is a folder that we could, if we wanted, for example, initialize as a git commit, as a git repository with git init, and then maybe push to GitHub, so that you have your .files saved in a very good place, right? That you can then access from anywhere, and also you can track the changes to your .files as you change your preferences as you go, and then you take it from there and reuse it in any computer environment. So the next thing I'm gonna do is to show you how you could reuse. So basically, we have already achieved something very useful just by navigating and copying files and looking into them, which is this idea of storing your preferred configurations of your system. And then the next part of this session is gonna be to show you very quickly how you can reuse them in an RStudio Cloud project. But before I do that, let me go back to your faces here and see if we have any comment or question. I think we still have enough time to complete this session. No comments yet. So then let me show you the rest of the lesson. Is okay. So now we have those files, how can we reuse them? So the first thing I would do is create a compact version of that folder. So why? Okay, let me first go to the place where I would like to reuse that computer environment. So I'm gonna go to RStudio Cloud. RStudio Cloud, if you don't know, it is a free service by RStudio that gives you free computers, basically. So you can click in new project, for example, and start a new RStudio project. And then it comes with a no name, untitled project, and you can call it, say, home demo. I'm gonna call it whatever name you want. This takes a little while, not a lot longer, and we will be dropped in an RStudio environment that is kind of boring because it doesn't have our preferred configuration. It doesn't have aliases. It doesn't know. Git doesn't know who we are. So I'm gonna prove that first to you. Although the first thing I would like to do is to go to the terminal and navigate to the home directory of this computer. We know how to do that. cd change directory tilde for home, and we are now in the home directory. And to do the same here, I would like to show the home directory too. So I'm going to go to the console and set the working directory to to home tilde. So this is kind of the R way to set your computer to the working directory. And now here I want to do a couple of things. First, I want to navigate to the working directory, which is now the home. So this is the home of this computer. And the second thing I want to do is to show the hidden files and hidden directories. So as you can see, there is a couple of hidden directories configured in RStudio, but there is nothing of the files that I'm interested in reusing. There is no .git config, and there is no .profile, there is no .bashrc or anything like that. So let's confirm that with an ls-a. So you can see it's very boring. If I type alias, I don't get any alias because there is nothing configured there. So this environment is really hard to use. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna reuse our dot files. We're gonna just drop them here, and that's all we need to do to get the experience that we are used to in our local environment. How do you upload files here? Well, there is this upload button here. So let me expand that. I think, yeah, upload. The issue here is that it likes a file, not a directory, and we have our files stored in a folder. We could do one by one, and that will work. We could bring, each of the files one by one, but we have the powers of the terminal, so we may just use them just by learning this one new command, zip. So zip is, that's what you expect. You would zip a folder into a single file that has everything that you want. So you have to zip recursively in this case for all the files that are inside the directory .files. And we are gonna first you first give the name of the file that you want to create. It's gonna be called .filezip. And then you have to tell it where the files come from. In this case, recursively inside the directory .files. So this is the command. If I do an ls now, you see this red file here is the zip version of our .file. So this is what we want to upload to RStudio Cloud, and then uncompress, and voila, we're gonna have the environment that we want. So to do that, I need to move, to have access to that folder, I need to move it. I'm gonna use the command move. I'm gonna move .files inside projects, and I'm gonna press tab for auto-completion. I need to move it there because that's the only place that I can access in this Docker environment, and I can kind of get it out from there. So where is my zip file? Should be somewhere here that I can't see. Maybe I need to refresh this little window.
I think you moved the folder, not the zip, right?
Maybe you're right. Yes, thank you. .files. Thank you, Monica. That's right, and the folder is there. So the folder can be deleted now. And instead, I'm gonna do on the terminal, the zip file. Let's see if that works. Let's refresh. Yes, so this is the file that I want. So now from RStudio.cloud, I need to just click on that upload button, find that file in my computer. In my case, it's gonna be here, this one, open. So RStudio, when uploads something that is a zip file, it's gonna uncompress it automatically, and there are the files. So you could just click here and click on move them, write to the root of the home directory here. But again, we have the powers of the terminal, so we could do first an ls to orient ourselves. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna cd to change directory into dot files, right? And now let me clear this up with Control L. So with ls -a, as usual, we see that all the files that we want are there. So what we want to do simply is copy cp everything here dot, which is all the files in this directory, and we're gonna move them to the home directory. So basically the root of the home. I think I may need the recursive flag. Let's see. Yes, I need the recursive flag. So -r here, and voila. So if I now do change directory to the home, remember that before it was very boring. There was nothing in there. So if I do an ls -a now, I do see all the files that they are there. This terminal still won't behave as I expect because, again, it started before I moved those files. But if I close all the terminals and then start a new one, you will see how this terminal now is cool. So let's do cd tilde, let's type alias, and our aliases are there. So for example, if I touch a file, say file A, and then I want to remove A, then I'm going to be asked if I want to remove it because I'm using the interactive version of RM through the alias that we wrote. And that proves that we are now in this much nicer computer environment, which also in this particular case also comes with colors for ls. Okay, so that kind of completes the exercise of customizing our environment, saving the dot files to a folder that we can keep track of, and then reusing that very quickly in a new environment, in this case in RStudio.cloud. All right, goodbye Monica, I see you saying bye. Any other departing comments or questions here before we go? Okay, thanks everyone. With this, we kind of close the first section of the series. Later, we're gonna be talking about like deeper stuff, more developer oriented. But with this, even if you leave the series now, you will still have learned very useful things, which I hope this use case proves. All right, see you next time. Thanks for joining.